Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is your home for 5-minute artisanal, organic Bible study, the finest 5-minute Bible bistro on the internet right here. Now, this week we've been looking at Psalm 116. Today, we're going to look at verses 9 through 11. I teased you just a little bit yesterday about 9 through 11, saying this is the conflict of the redeemed. We're going to look at that here in just a minute, but I found an entry in Steinsaltz's edition of the Talmud I wanted to read to you about these psalms, the Hallel psalms that we're in right now, 113 through 118. And these psalms, of course, Hallel, hallelujah, it means praise. These Psalms 113 through 118 are recited on events in the Jewish calendar such as Passover, Sukkot, Hanukkah, Simchat Torah, those days of celebration, and it's ordained by the prophets. According to the Talmud, these Hallel Psalms and the reading of them is ordained by the prophets and the sages, and a blessing is said before and after it. And in addition to being ordained by the prophets and the blessing being ordained, it is customary to recite an abridged version of the Hallel on the Rosh Hodesh and on the intermediate and final days of Passover. Now, these are different customs. There are different customs that refer to different communities, and some communities do an abridged version, some communities do a full version. That is, they read all these psalms all the way through and every verse. So that's just how important these few 6 psalms are to the Jewish community in their celebrations. And I mentioned, I think it was yesterday or maybe it was on Monday, that I think it was yesterday, we had the hour. Remember the hour, God is merciful? We talked about the congregational confession that's happening here. The people are gathered together for worship, and so they're saying hour. And I said, well, this was used for worship. This was obviously a psalm of community. And so the Talmud here giving us a little bit more information about how in community these particular psalms, this grouping of psalms, the Hallel psalms, have been used. So today we're looking at verses 9 through 11. Let me go ahead and read those for you. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I believed, therefore I have spoken. I was greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are liars. That's 9 through 11. Now I want you to notice he's walking before the Lord in the land of the living. So now we have this man who has come out of trouble, who has been released from the pains of hell. The sorrow and the trouble that he had found is now past because the gracious God whom he prayed to has delivered him, freed him from that death. And I said this is salvation. This is someone who has seen the light of their sin and the light of the cross and has called on the name of the Lord and found release and redemption. Now he's walking in the land of the living in the light of his conversion, and it says, I believe, therefore I've spoken. I was greatly afflicted. So he's confessing his faith, and yet affliction is happening to him. What is that about? You see, Jesus told us that if we live for him, we're going to suffer persecution. The godly always suffer persecution. And so this man walking in the land of the living, making his confession of the deliverance that God had given him, is finding now affliction. And notice what he says in 11. I said in my haste, all men are liars. Notice he said in his haste. So he's disturbed, he's disappointed, he's hurt, he has despair because he's finding that everyone doesn't appreciate the same God that he does. And so there's this affliction that's due to the evil of mankind in the conduct of a holy life. The holy life will always come into conflict with the evil of men who have not received the Lord. Okay, now tomorrow we're going to see what he does about that. And we will begin tomorrow with verse 12, and that'll take us through verse 15. I hope you'll join me then for Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.